everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Hart, and thank you, June. I'm so happy to see everyone. I can't really see the whole audience, but I see my panelists. I'm so happy that you all are here. I want to just start with talking a little bit about the Action Lab for Social Justice. So there we go. I'm having a lot of different things going on there. So the Action Lab for Social Justice and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office is really happy today to work together in coming together around the celebration of Trans Day of Visibility. As Hart said, my name is Ovita Williams. I am a queer, Afro-Caribbean, cisgender woman. I am a social worker. I'm a mother. I have many different parts of my identity that are represented here, what you see, what you don't see. I'm also executive director of the Action Lab for Social Justice, which is a student-driven center started by students of color, Natasha Dobbins and Caitlin Yee, along with professors Desmond Patton and Susan Whitty. 2 years ago, the Action Lab was started out of a call for action in response to the COVID pandemic, which was disproportionately impacting communities of color, and also with the anti-Black racism sentiments in our society, in our country, with the killing of George Floyd. Our students said we needed, as a School of Social Work, a place to center, to talk about, to think about social justice, to put in action, not just in words, but really in action, the ways in which many forms of oppression impact communities that we serve, centering anti-Black racism and undoing white supremacy practices. So fast forward, here we are 4 years, the Action Lab, which is the center, supported by over 12 initiatives, environmental justice, reproductive justice, Mojo Circles, there's a podcast, Ebony Towers, that are led and organized by students through practice, through education, through research. The Action Lab has really given students, faculty, and the school an opportunity to again, put into action all of what we truly believe in around human rights and social justice. Today, through the Lavender Collective, which is a part of the Action Lab, the Lavender Collective, which started 2 years ago by our students as a place for LGBTQAI plus two-spirited students to center joy, to really look at how, as an institution, we are being inclusive. And the Lavender Collective over the last 2 years has been an incredible resource in terms of building community and also around joy and really being able to have an impact on hearing the voices and the experiences. And that's what today's panel is really about. Today, we're centering joy, trans joy. And I want to thank Hart and June for really bringing to the school and the Lavender Collective an opportunity for this panel as we think about Trans Day of Visibility. And really want to thank the panelists for being with us today. I'm very excited to hear from all of you. As I started describing who I am and my intersecting identities, we understand that so many parts of our identities are connected. And it's so important that we're very aware and mindful of that. Our panelists have come and been invited to share their experiences around trans joy. We have a wonderful group of questions and really excited to hear responses. The views of our panelists are their own and not necessarily that of the Action Lab or DEI or the School of Social Work, and really, really want to be able to open up space for discussion and dialogue and celebration. So all perspectives and all experiences are essential and important to how we're really thinking about creating space for inclusivity, and as in the Action Lab, as we say, for love and care across all of our various experiences. So thank you again. I think I'm turning this over to my colleague Lorenzo, who is our DEI assistant director, I think. But thank you all and look forward to this wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And I just want to echo a few things that Dr. Williams has said, but I also want to first thank the student organizers and the panelists and everyone for being here and being a part of this conversation. It is overdue and much needed. A lot of the work that Dr. Williams has said through the Action Lab has been, very much supported, strongly supported with the DI office as it relates to transvisibility at CSSW. These are initiatives that students have been fighting for some time at CSSW, even back when I was a student. So it's really, really heartwarming to really see a lot of the initiatives come to fruition. That doesn't mean that there's not work that there still need to be done. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and our offices are committed to working with students to making sure that work will get done. So just wanted to, echo everything that Lavita said and really welcome everyone to this panel. And I am really looking forward to some very rich dialogue and discussion about how folks experience and access their trans joy as we approach Trans Day of Visibility on March 31st. And so with that being said, I will pass it right back to our student moderators so they can not only introduce the panelists, but get us kicked off and really share more information about Trans Day of Visibility, what that is in the context of today. So thank you all again.
Thank you so much, Dr. O. Thank you, Lorenzo, and thank you everyone for being here. So good to know so many people care about this. And this is a passion project for June and I. We're both first year students here. And personally, for me, it has been a really challenging experience, as a lot of you know, for me here. I came from a community where all my friends were trans, and then everyone here was mostly cis het. And I was like, wow, y'all are still out here like this. It was culture shock. So I'm excited to share our panelists. And for me, just having June as a classmate has been really healing to not be the only one in so many classrooms and so many places I have been. So I'm just grateful for you. I look up to you as a trans person, who's been I feel like we're different ages, different trans ages, and I feel like I've learned a lot from you about allyship for trans women and how I can show up for communities BIPOC trans communities who are me, who share my identities and don't. So these are growth places for me. So thank you. You want to say something?
Yeah, no, that was unexpected and very sweet. And the learning has been very multidirectional. I think as most people who are across whatever lines marginalized know, when you are often the only person of your experience in a space, when you have the opportunity to connect with someone who shares your identity, and not only shares your identity, but shares your alignments and affinities and way of approaching this work, it can be really, really powerful and a site of peace in a very chaotic world and sometimes chaotic institution. So thank you for that, Heart. With that said, we will lead into the question portion of our panel. And we'd like to just sort of begin by asking our panelists to tell us a little bit about themselves in their own words. Perhaps Landon, we can begin with you since you're the first name that I see. And we'll move down the line.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Landon. I use they, them pronouns. I would say I've worn, multiple hats in my life and career. Right now, I could best describe myself as a trans non-binary fitness and nutrition coach, and I work with other queer and trans people to help them feel more confident and gender affirmed through lifting weights. So this is my full-time career right now, and it's one of my biggest passions in life. And in the past, I've also been a professional photographer and videographer. I wanted to mention that because it's something that I want to get back into, sort of in this theme of trans joy. And I know this panel isn't just about fitness, so I wanted to mention that as well. Prior to the COVID lockdown, all of my photography and artwork centered around stuff like trans love and relationships, trans body acceptance, and just other fun things that are related to, exploring or playing with gender expression.
Thank you, Landon. We'll continue with Christina.
Hi everyone, I'm Cristina Herrera and I go by she, her, ella pronouns. I'm an immigrant from El Salvador. I've been living in the US for about almost, I think it's like 42 years. I can't believe I'm aging myself right now, but I still look like if I'm 20, I know. College student. Just kidding. So yeah, so most of my life has been living here in New York City. I decided to move here from the West Coast because I needed to find myself. Back when I was a young teenager, I had so much confusion about who I was. Education around being trans wasn't as available, especially in my native language, which was Spanish. So part of the process of me finding myself and making a lot of my dreams come true was assisting other community members in going through their own process. And a lot of my core happiness, a lot of my core joy, satisfaction has been, evolving and watching my circles evolve with me. And so that has empowered me a lot and that has given me like a lot of meaning. But I'm not going to talk too much about that until we move through the questions and stuff. But I just want to say that, fast forward a couple of decades later, I run a nonprofit, which I started back in 2007, and we're doing great. We work with over 700 clients, and I'm proud to say that, right now we have a budget of like $2.7 million for a translator organization, which is, I think it's a big deal because, like just a few years ago, like we were just struggling to get pennies. So that's where I'm at right now. So thank you everyone for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Christina. TK, we will continue with you.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Tristan. Some people also know me as TK. My pronouns are Z, Zir, and Zirs. I am a Black trans queer fat educator based in Michigan. For my day job, I work in higher education. I work with queer and trans college students, making sure that like I can make the world suck a little bit less with them, as well as like just trying to support them throughout like their college career and their journey, as well as supporting and advocating a very rambunctious, chaotic staff who I love dearly, as well as I also love being able to do things that are not related to my work. I do queer and trans work for like a living. And so I love also being able to do like a lot of things that dive into like kind of like my spiritual like journey. So I do tarot, I'm self-taught, which has been like a really great way for me to like build an extension of like what spirituality means for me as a trans person. As well as I love just cuddling my cats. I wish I was home with them right now. But for me, that's just like a little bit about me, as well as I've been working in like higher education for the last like decade of my life, and I understand how rough it is. I understand from a student and professional perspective. But I'm super excited to be here, super excited to be able to be in community with you all on Zoom, the panelists, as well as folks in person. So excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Tristan. And last but certainly not least, Ita, you may take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, June and Hart, for all the intentional and loving work to get us here. My name is Ita. I use she, her pronouns. I am a writer, a performer, an organizer. I was born and raised in Jerusalem. I'm an anti-Zionist Israeli and a trans woman, and do a lot of work on the intersection of those two, which looks like many things. In the last 6 months, it's obviously been a lot about trying to stop the funding coming from this empire towards the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza and towards the general destruction of my home. Yeah, it's there's a lot to say about the work. It feels a little nerve-wracking to be here. I'm sure we'll get into it, but it felt there's a lot of suppression in this institution. So even in this sort of process of wanting to talk about trans joy, it felt like I was met with a lot of attempts to erase part of my identity, part of my work, to not, I imagine, make patrons or other people uncomfortable. And so I'm glad we get to sort of reclaim this space for and by us and kind of define joy on our terms.
Thank you to the panelists. And I think I was so nervous. I forgot to thank like everyone who helped make this happen, the DEI office, the Action Lab, June.
Art.
Yeah, I'm just really glad for the support we've got in this, because coming into Columbia 9 months ago, I was like, admitted students say like, do y'all have trans professors? And there was a panel and everyone went. So this is actually radical that we're doing this. So I'm really glad that we're growing together. So my question is, or our next question is, how do you cultivate, maintain, and access trans joy in your personal and professional life?
I can start. I think for me, I like how I like think about and like experience joy is like something that's like a very core part of like my being. It's like the foundation to like how I live my life. And so I know for me, and like I feel like it might be a similar sentiment to others, is that like I know that like institutions are not built for us. We're not going to be saved by them. We're not here to change them per se, quote unquote, in the sense of like, we know that the work and the joy that we want to experience is going to be outside of the outside of institutions as a whole, right? And so for me, that is like a philosophy that I live every day. I'm like, this is not going to save me. I got to do what I need to do to get by, but like I want to make sure that I'm able to cultivate true community and like what that means in areas that like folks might not expect. So like I live in Michigan, I work in Michigan. Michigan is also my home state. And so for me, I intentionally moved back because I wanted to be able to rebuild some of the community that I had here, as well as like foster and build new community. And so for me, that's separating my personal, my professional life is a big part for me, as well as finding quote unquote unorthodox ways of being able to build community. I'm someone that loves to be able to like maintain like trans joy like through food and through like experiences of food. So I love to cook. I love just being able to like just like spread the word and make things like more accessible. Like in my area, I live in like a college town, so there's like not a lot for like folks that are not students. And so that's something that I'm like trying to like figure out and to build. But also like for me, like I know at the end of the day, like joy is like the one thing that can't be taken away from me because I'm the one that builds it and I'm the one that's wanting to build it with others. And so when I was asked to be on this panel and I got to read like all the panelists' bios, I got so excited to like be in this space with everybody and knowing all of the great, amazing like work and experiences that like we all have, as well as June and Hart organizing this, like knowing that this and like what we're doing right now is like a facet of trans joy, but knowing that within the work that we've been doing in our communities like is so much more important. And so yeah, I'll leave it there. That's just a little bit about me. Yeah.
I guess I'll share a little bit also about what trans joy looks for me. So over the years, a lot of it has been, yes, how can I say, allowing myself to experience life, allowing myself to, you know, to celebrate a lot of those accomplishments that I have been able to experience, but also allowing myself to, you know, to also experience the pain of going through the different hardships and stuff, because unfortunately, you know, uh, living life as a trans woman of color, trans immigrant, it's not very easy. I gotta speak for myself, and I don't want to generalize my whole community, but you know, from the circle that I'm from, you know, we have experienced like so much like institutional violence and also community violence as a whole. And so it hasn't been easy. But what I have always tried to remember and to remind myself is that happiness starts within. And as Tristan said, you know, we have to make sure that that's something that we grab onto and make sure that we hold on to it and make sure that nobody gets in the way of taking it away from us, because it could be very easy, you know, for that to happen. Overall, I feel that for me, trans joy is like a communal sense of a feeling. It's like if my circle is feeling happy, feeling satisfied, feeling complete, then I'm also feeling complete. Because it's really hard for me to be like, oh yeah, my life is perfect, and look at you, you're homeless. So I look at you, you're dealing with like a chronic condition. It's like, no, like I want to be able to find the light, find the happiness within each and every one of us, especially my immediate circle. So then that way we can celebrate together. We can, you know, just you know, connect in a deeper level and not have to be like questioning, you know, or kind of like feeling sorry about a lot of things, because it's very easy to go into that direction. And I've been, you know, working to manage a lot of those you know, intersecting feelings that come up and stuff. As I enter, you know, a different stage of my life, you know, my early 50s, I have been more intentional about allowing myself to live life better, like separating it from my career. So I've been like making sure that I'm taking time for me. And when I'm taking time for me, being very boundaried about like, I'm taking this vacation. Or you know what? I went on vacation last month. Let me take another long weekend because I deserve it, you know, because it's like, you know, so many years of like building community, building an institution, you know, it has come at a price. And I'm like, I'm 50 years old, you know, like 52, 53. And I hate that. It's a little, the years keep coming by so quickly. 53 years old. And, you know, I'm like, I need to enjoy myself as much as possible. Because, you know, like, I don't want to wait until I'm 60 or 65 or 70. It's like, I've been working so hard in my 20s transition, you know, working so hard in my 30s just to become financially stable, you know, working so hard in my 40s to build an institution, you know, to stay stable. I'm like, no, I need to make sure I'm putting myself first, you know, and I have to. And we have to teach our peers to do the same thing, because a lot of times we put families first, or we put other, individuals and institutions, and then we sacrifice ourselves. So I'm fighting to go against a lot of that within reason. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
I resonate with a lot of the things that you say about, like you have to take care of yourself better. And I definitely see that with a lot of queer and trans folks in the community, especially because like we are so community oriented. I feel like everybody always wants to take care of each other. And part of what I do with folks with teaching them to work out and eat well is teaching self-care as well, because so many of my clients, when they first come to me, talk about how, it's like their whole lives they've prioritized kind of everybody else, or like prioritized, work, or maybe organizing, or maybe being a caretaker for parents, partners, friends. And they're usually the ones that's left out. So yeah, for me, I wanted to become a trainer because it was something that I found a lot of joy in myself. When I started working out and moving my body more, I just felt connected to myself in a way that I never had before. And I didn't know that that was missing until I had it. Because prior to that, I felt very disconnected from my body. I felt like I didn't have dysphoria in the sense where it was like, I disliked parts of my body. I discovered that I had dysphoria in the sense that I just totally blocked all of that out. And being able to move my body connected me to that part of myself again. Yeah, like I found a lot of euphoria in having that be a part of my lifestyle. And then I just found that like it opened a lot of doors for me in terms of, for example, like feeling comfortable enough to wear a wetsuit, discover something like I like surfing, and then, really being able to think about like, wow, like I could travel to these different countries and that are famous for surfing and surf in them. And, these were things prior to starting my fitness journey that I didn't think that I could do or never thought about. So it kind of, I felt like it was like it opened my eyes to the world in a different way. And so I really wanted to help other people find that, whatever that was for them. So, this is the type of work that I do with my clients. And for a lot of folks, like I like to ask, like, why they're interested in maybe having this be a part of their lifestyle, or have a workout routine, or why they want the changes that they want, why they want to be strong, why they want to build muscle, or whatever it is, and how they might see that affecting their life once they have that. Or I might ask in retrospect, let's say after a year of working together, how they've seen this impact their life. And a lot of the answers come out to being like, a lot higher confidence, and this leading to, let's say like better sex, more presence when they're hanging out with their friends or in the community, they're more confident in meeting other people. And I just find that this has such a ripple effect on, not just yourself, but then it's like everybody around you and everybody that you love. So, yeah, I do think that a lot of joy does start with yourself. And then once you have that, I think that, that happiness can be really infectious, and it can be really inspiring. And other people, that happens for them too, hopefully. So
Thank you so much, Landon. And I think Ita.
I think for me, I really appreciate what you were saying, Tristan, about institutions not saving us, and what you were saying, Christina, about sort of the permission to also feel all you're feeling, including the hardships. Because I think for me in this moment, it was an interesting prompt for me to think about joy in this moment, if I'm being honest, just because it's been a time with kind of facing relentless violence and relentless mass death in a scale that I haven't faced before. And I guess appreciating what Dr. Williams said before about sort of naming state violence and naming who's causing the violence. So like Zionists cause death. And I think there's a type of joy, a type of lightness that, if I'm being honest, isn't currently so accessible. But what can be accessible and what does feel really important is spaces where one can feel their feelings in community in their entirety. I notice that a lot lately, that in pockets of spaces where I get to be with loved ones, where I get to be in with comrades, when I get to be with people I'm building relationships with, and there isn't some sort of externally imposed block of like, you can't go there, you can't feel that, that's too much, that's dangerous, you know. But instead, then there's kind of a flow of a state where you can actually find yourself grieving 1 minute and then appreciating how beautiful the sky is the next. So I guess for me, it's kind of like an uninterrupted access to knowledge of self, knowledge of others, that feels as closest to joy these days.
Thank you all. That was beautifully said. So we wanted to bring the conversation back to visibility. This is a panel honoring Trans Day of Visibility. So with that in mind, what are the costs of visibility? Who does it benefit and at what cost? How do we hold space for grief and anger while also still holding hope?
So when I think about the cost of visibility, I kind of reference to what we're living through right now. We have had like a how can I say a very overall like we've been through like a period of time, especially here in the US, where we have been able to really live more authentically, more proud, more freely to some degree. I know that that has not been all over the country, but most of the progressive cities and states and stuff. And now we're beginning to pay the price for that. Unfortunately, we see that you know, those institutions that historically have caused us so much harm are beginning to really ramp up, and they're doing as much as they can to take away a lot of our freedoms. They're making our lives, you know, how can I say, not I guess not free, not human and stuff. They're making everything about who we are as illegal and stuff. And so I believe that the price of progress has also, you know, can also be very, very expensive. But you know, we can't let that stop us. We have to continue to push forward and push back and help those that are not able to fend for themselves, because you know, living in New York, the reality is very different than living in Florida. And so like right now, we need to fight for Florida, even if we're like, you know, on the other side of the country, you know, up north, because like it's going to be really hard for them. They're going to have a really hard time like going through life and being at risk of being, you know, incarcerated at times and stuff. And we have to be able to also let our community know that, you know, that there are places here in the US where we can look for, you know, for refuge and look for liberty and stuff like that. And so a lot of what I'm doing is also making sure that we have plenty of resources. So for those individuals that need to migrate and not just migrate from outside the country, sadly also migrate from within the country, which is a shame that we have to go through that, that we have spaces for them here, you know, in you know, New York City, and other states such as California and stuff like that. I think that's all I have for that question.
My partner and I were having a conversation about visibility over brunch last weekend, actually, and we were kind of talking about how there's so much visibility these days, but there's no protection, so that's created kind of this very dangerous environment. And I just feel like I remember coming out as a teenager 10, 11 years ago, and it was like people just didn't really know what trans was, and so it's either like they didn't know anything, so they didn't really say anything about it, or you know, I mean, there were negative comments too, but there were also people that would say like, wow, I'm glad that you're able to live your truth and be authentic. That's really cool. These days I feel like there's a lot more negativity, and like it's crazy because it's like I get all of this hate online, like on my fitness profile when I post about trans fitness, or I post about, you know, things that I think that other trans people might relate to. Um, I have lived my life as a trans person for a little bit now, so it's like I know what it's like in real life versus online. You know, in real life, people, even if they have these thoughts, they might not say these things to you, to your face. But I just think about, you know, youth or kids who maybe live in, or maybe even adults who live in places that aren't maybe like progressive larger cities, and that's the only interaction that they see other people have with trans people. And I think about how it's like, if you don't know the other side of things, if you don't have like a real queer community, how dangerous that could be. And yeah, it makes me sad to put myself out there authentically and then have other trans people see that I'm getting hated on. Um, yeah, I'm not sure what else to say about that. I just think too that, you know, a couple years ago was like the peak of like corporate pride. And how like now we're kind of seeing a reversal of that, right? It's like people are kind of pulling their sponsorships, they're pulling their pride stuff. And honestly, I think maybe it should stay that way a little bit. I think I'm a little bit ready for queerness and transness to be a little bit more underground again. Just because, you know, I really do believe in local community. I think it's like we're gonna support each other and uplift each other's voices, and I don't really need like big companies to do that. So if they don't want to do that, I think they can stay not touching us.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think one way I kind of organize the world for myself a lot is thinking kind of what one needs to survive this world, how it is right now, and what do we need in order to push to a world where we actually want to exist in and can exist in freely, knowing that those worlds are like vastly different from one another. And in some way, I think visibility is kind of very shallow and falls short on both fronts. In this world right now, it honestly, in day-to-day life, outside of marketplaces and maybe places where you can kind of capitalize off of it, just like walking out the door, visibility is still dangerous for a lot of people, especially the closer to the margins they are. And in the world we're working towards, I think visibility, yeah, as said, does not speak of protection, does not speak of integration, does not speak of care, does not speak of love, does not speak of revolution. It doesn't speak about all the things that actually kind of allow us to get to that place. And so I guess a part of me has a hope that we can really move into more of an integration model where we genuinely believe this thing that people say, that none of us are free until all of us are, where we genuinely believe that immigration justice has everything to do with trans justice, has everything to do with Palestinian justice, has everything to do with Black justice, has everything to do, like, that is literally, we're in it together. And that any force that tries to make us pick or choose, to slice it in the middle, to make us say that we can only talk about certain things and not others, is kind of missing the point of the collective. And I think more personally, I had a therapist once who told me this sentence that this psychologist Winnicott said. He said this about like children's playing hide and seek, but it's this sentence that said, it's a joy to be hidden and a disaster not to be found. And I think of that just in relationship to like the amount of things that actually are really beautiful, that grow in the darkness, that grow underground, that grow in a womb, that can't be like easily accessed from the outside, but also the kind of fear of being disappeared, of being invisibilized, of never being seen. And I guess I wish for trans people, for us to have more ownership on that space, because I feel like we're often kind of manipulated into that very raw kind of binary of like, you're either erased or you have to be hyper visible. And I would like us to kind of find a space between where we have agency over that.
Ita, you made me think of a quote that I have also heard from a colleague of mine, Dr. D.L. Stewart, who's based out of the University of Denver, who's an amazing Black trans human, talked about being visible and being seen are two separate things. I work on I don't say predominantly, like I say historically white institution. And I also live in an area that like there are not a lot of folks of color. And so I think about just like walking out of my home, how visible I am because I might be the only Black person that they see. Right. And in turn, I always think about how for me, being visible was more for me, as in that's what I needed to do at the time when I was trying to discover my identity. That was really important in like how I kind of perceived myself. But now I know I'm in a place where I just want to be seen as just a person, like a trans person that's just like navigating the world like everybody else type of stuff, not in the sense of like assimilation, but just like we exist, we've always existed, we're going to continue to exist. And so a lot of how like I think about like what the cost of that is like knowing that I in the work that I do, like I have to risk every day in ways that other people don't because of how I am and the identities that I hold, and knowing that for all of us that risk looks very different. It could be just a risk of, like you said, Ita and others have shared, just being outside, right? Being Lana, like you said, like being like very openly visible, like online, right? And Christina, like you like being able to like do it within the work that you do and like within the communities of like what that looks like. And I think fully just like being able to like embrace that grief, embrace that pain, embrace that fear, but but not necessarily letting us like kind of control us, but like don't like push it down. Like really just like experience like all the emotions and know that like we still have to continue to move forward. Cause I know and a lot of us though, like that's exactly what a lot of our ancestors wanted to do, and didn't get an opportunity to do so. Whether that was through their own means or by others and institutions, right? And so I want to hold all of that and know that I'm like, okay, I know I'm here, and what I want to do and I want to be in the world is be able to show that like we exist, we're going to continue to exist, and be able to know that we're more than visibility, and us to be seen authentically in a way where like Ita, you said, where we have the agency to decide that. And Landon, I agree that like I like a little more underground kind of stuff, get rid of the corporate pride stuff, I appreciate it.
The next series of questions is, given all of that we've talked about, the anti-trans legislation, et cetera, in the US, what is holding your heart together? From where do you draw inspiration and hope? What roles do imagination and community play? First chunk of questions. Second chunk, how do we hold on to trans liberation and trans joy in the face of the next US presidential election? And what role do those people play?
I'm not really like an activist or an organizer, but from just like a personal sense, what's been interesting about seeing cis people now really mention their horrible opinions and seeing that, like, it's like if I just say one sentence to them telling them that I'm trans, that how they treat me could be completely different. It's brought me a lot closer to other trans people and made me a lot more T for T in many senses. So it's almost like I'm already T for T at work, because it's like 80% of my clients are non-binary and trans as well. I'm in a relationship with a trans woman, and it just makes me appreciate transness and being queer and being trans like a lot more. I feel like it's really shown me how uncreative other people's idea about gender and sexuality is, and how grateful I am. I think being a trans person, you cross like a gender binary in a way, and then it just shows you how much other stuff in the world and in society is like constructed, and there's so many binaries that exist that don't need to be, like not just with gender but also with um I don't know, so many things, like, yeah, either being super hidden or being hyper visible, or um being, let's say, like one thing I've been thinking about is like, how like with relationships with other people, how they're either like, totally platonic or romantic. Like I think there's like in betweens between so many different things, and it just makes my life, I feel like, a lot better to be able to um feel like I live authentically in a multitude of ways, not just with my gender. And when I see people with hateful comments online, it just tells me more about them, and it just shows me that it's like, they're this way because they have some sort of insecurity about not being able to be authentic in some way in their life, not necessarily with their gender or sexuality, but just there's something that they want to do that they don't because society tells them you have to live life a certain way. And I'm just grateful that, being trans has shown me that, you could choose to live life in a lot of different ways and be authentic in whatever feels true to you.
I love the shout out for T relationships. Echo that, shouting out loving on trans women, shouting out my trans boyfriend who's been holding me together too and is in this Zoom, I believe. And yeah, I think that's honestly very, very important to learn to love each other and ourselves through each other. I think what's been holding my heart together, I think what the sort of forces that have been and are more extremely trying to eradicate us across many identities are again showing me so clearly is that it's all very much so connected, that the evangelical white Christian who wants trans people not to have healthcare is the same one who wants like the end of times to happen in Palestine and is like supporting Zionism, and is the same one who wants to control like reproductive justice and reproductive rights. And so I think this kind of like interlock of deadly systems is really showing us that what we're doing right now is fighting together for our lives. And that's kind of just the time, and that's what else are we going to do with this life if not find each other and really try to like have deep faith in the possibility that a future and life is possible for this planet, for our bodies, for each other. And so I guess that's kind of the fuel, and the fury is when people try to get us to settle for less, which again I keep kind of insinuating a little bit, but we're almost done. But like when I'm told you can't actually talk about your bio and promotional material about Palestine because that has nothing to do with being trans, and I'm saying like, wait, you can't actually try to make me choose between one and the other. That is a kind of settling for less that again maybe works for institutional funds but doesn't work for people, doesn't work for us as a community. So I guess a return to the fact that we're doing it together, we're doing it for all of us, is kind of what lets me keep going.
I would say that what's holding my heart together is thinking about I made it through the crack epidemic in the 80s. That's when I was a teenager, and a lot of my friends succumb to addiction and stuff like that. Some of them were able to get into recovery and stuff like that. But those were like really testing times for many of us. Also the height of the HIV, epidemic. It was in the 80s and 90s, and I was able to to make it through there, and to stay alive and to stay safe and to see my community, overcome a lot of the obstacles. Now we're like enjoying, more like a more sense of like health and prevention and stuff. So for me, that has something that I think of during this very difficult times. And no, apart from that, yeah, thinking about, just seeing how many people are out to get us and harm us, but we're pushing back. We're not the community that was there in the 80s or 90s. We have come a long way. We're fighting back. We're accessing positions of power. Like, we are, doing our best to push back at those systems and stuff. So I have faith in community, that community will take care of each other, and that we're gonna get through this. It won't be easy because there's gonna be hard times that are coming, harder times and stuff. But I believe that it's only gonna make us stronger because they can't stop us, they cannot extinguish us. We will continue to yes, to continue to to evolve and to get better and to really be the resilient individuals that we are. And so I hang on to all of that. I hang on to all of that, and I know that every day that I wake up, every day that I go out there and that I smile at people that do like me for being who I am, and people who don't like me for who I am, it's like I'm resisting, and I'm existing. And that's what I continue to do. And that's what a lot of my community continues to do. Thank you.
I'm resonating with what everybody has shared. And it really does like warm my heart to hear from everybody, as well as also shout out to T for T Relationships. My fiance, who is non-binary, is also on the Zoom. Hi babe, I love you. But for me, I echo a lot of like what Christina and others have shared, is really for me what holds my heart as my community, and it's gonna be a little bit cheesy, is my students. I've worked at a lot of institutions across this country, and my students literally are the only reason why I continue to do this work. They literally are the only reason why. I used to work in California, Northern California. I had a very harmful experience at the institution that I used to work at. And the only folks that held me down were my students. And if I could just show them an ounce of just, hey, like, know that there are way more better things beyond college, then I've done a little bit of my job. But a lot of them, like, I'm still in touch with, like, throughout the years, and like I've been seeing them be able to grow and be able to become the queer and trans people that they've always dreamt of being, and also fighting for resistance, right? Like fighting for like our community and doing the work. And wanting to continue to do the work and be in community with me just makes me so proud. As well as I think about like my now friends who are former colleagues of mine in California, who are continuing to do the work, especially like showing up for our Black, Indigenous, and Latino, like queer and trans students, who face a lot of anti-Blackness on campuses, as well as just being able to like experience things that I thought I would never experience. And so like for me, like this is like a way that like I resist, is like for me, like I'm getting married. I know people have feelings about the institution of marriage, and I hold that very firmly. But like for me, it's something that has really been like important for me in trying to like determine like how can I like hold on and hold my heart and be able to experience community together. And I also really do hone in on like dreaming more than like what we've been like prescribed to like society of like, what's your career? How, like, the white picket fence, right? For a lot of people, a dream for them is having a roof over their head, having food to eat, not worrying about having access to clean water, right? And so knowing that dreaming for me means dreaming for community, dreaming for folks to always have their basic needs met, dreaming for the liberation of all oppression around the world, because we know that oppressors will erase history because they want to repeat it. And so for me, that's like a large part of like what holds my heart, what like I want to inspire like hope. Knowing everything is so bleak, especially for like our young kids that are like trying to grow up in a world where there is so much harm. And so again, like my students are a lot of why I continue to do this work, and also just being able to be in space with my fellow panelists as well.
Thank you so much, y'all, again, for your responses. Moving on to Q&A. I see someone in the IRL space has their hand up.
But I just want to acknowledge like all the effort that y'all brought to this space, all the work that you brought to this space. It was really beautiful. I really appreciate being in community with everybody in this space here physically and online. So thank you. My question is kind of going off of a little bit what Ita said, but I also would love to hear from the other panelists as well. So I wrote it down because I don't want to mess it up. How do we navigate trans joy and visibility in social movements where hegemonic narratives tell us we don't belong? How can cis people step up in these spaces to include us? I'm specifically looking at the Palestinian liberation and resistance movement and countering pinkwashing narratives.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, it sounds like almost maybe I misunderstand, but two questions to me, because if I start with the pinkwashing, that seems like our sort of position is quite clear, you know, like as queer and trans people, we have an opportunity to sort of resist the idea that our identities can be used by the state to harm other people, including other queer and trans Palestinians. And we also have the opportunity to kind of imagine transness as something that's a lot more exciting, I think, which is to say, like an opportunity to think beyond borders and to think how we have a kind of responsibility and attention towards one another, even if we're positioned nationally to oppress one another, to hate one another. So it feels to me like we have a role within queer community to insist on the fact that Palestine is part of the conversation, to not shun and punish people who are speaking on it. I guess I'll just for a second shout out the beloved Cecilia Gentili, who we lost last month, and I loved dearly, and you know was up for the role of a trans woman of color, up to the role of running the LGBT center in New York, which she was denied because of her stance on Palestine, and then it was given to some cis woman who wasn't even from New York. So how sort of violent is that? And then in terms of other movements and cis people, I really, really think cis people have kind of a lot of homework to do to recognize when transphobia is happening, when trans misogyny is happening, when trans misogynoir is happening, so that they can call it out when we participate in non-trans centered movements. And also, honestly, just like let us talk, let us lead, let us be a part. Trans people have a lot to say about things that aren't only trans. And I think, you know, I want to see every person on this panel lead the fitness conversation in general, you know, lead racial justice and like the conversation on higher institutional in general, lead the immigration question in general. We don't only have to be in these boxes of like, we can only talk about our transness, because cis people are out here talking about everything, you know what I mean? So why shouldn't we? So that's my answer.
I think for me, I think we should remember that pinkwashing is also like all of the corporate pride stuff. That's a form of pinkwashing. So like, let's make sure that that is like aware that when companies put that little rainbow flag on their stuff, that's a form of pinkwashing. So let's just keep that in mind. I think also too, like really remembering and looking back at like our history, like I also like am like low key an archivist, and I say low key because I think it's so important for us to actually know our history and like learn about it, and knowing how interconnected a lot of our movements have been already throughout time. And that the forefront of a lot of those folks within those spaces have been primarily Black and Latina, Indigenous, trans women, period, right? Whether they've been named, whether they or not, right? Because like, A, they should be named. First and foremost, we should know every single person that does all of the organizing, making sure not only do they get their flowers, but we also are supporting them and making sure that they have their basic needs and more met, period, right? And understanding and knowing that a lot of the work that we do, like Ida said, is already interconnected, and we talk more. We're not just like, oh, we're just not just our identities. We have other interests. Like Landon's like, I do photography and also fitness, like, and recognizing that we can do like inter-movement work in so many different ways to be able to support one another. Like there are educators, teachers, physicians, right? Spiritual leaders, right? In all multifaceted. So I always look to the amazing work that is happening on college campuses. I do have a master's degree, and I wrote my thesis on student activism across the US. And so I think about how a lot of like departments that exist, women and gender studies, Chicana, Latina departments, Black studies, Indigenous studies, was because of students and faculty and staff fighting for those spaces to exist and continuing to fight for those spaces to exist, right? And for cis people, give us your money, pay us, and move out of the way, because a lot of times you can do the work by just giving your space up to somebody else. And for me, that's more important, because if I have like the silent folks, like, you know, giving money and supporting the work, cool, grand, just let that happen. So that way, again, we can all be able to thrive and do the things that we need to do, so that we can be more fulfilled. So I'll stop there.
I'm just gonna stick my plug in there about, you know, any like social work students that need a placement. You know, think about, you know, Translatina Network as an organization that can host. You'll be able to learn more about, you know, like community needs, community activism, and you'll get a full experience while at the same time making change and making communities better and safer. So we work a lot with NYU, sorry, but you know, if Columbia students wanna give us a try, we can definitely talk.
Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, go for it if you wouldn't mind just using the mic.
So first of all, thank you to all the panelists for showing up so authentically. It means a lot to me. And as a trans person who's like still very early in their like social and physical transition, I want to direct this question to Landon specifically, but anyone else can jump in. It's like very empowering to hear about how you're taking up so much space in a like predominantly cis male uh field of fitness, and I want to ask like what it can be very daunting to approach that sort of thing and want to make changes to yourself, and like when other people are, it feels like other people are like watching you, um whether literally or figuratively, and what I'm wondering, like what gave you the courage to be able to get past that and be physically present in like a gym, or you know, uh take up space online and like be unapologetic about it.
I think that one of the biggest things for me was I wanted to be the example for other people that you could be that one person that's in that space. So I do always encourage my clients to take up space in the gym. I know that it is hard because it's like different cities are going to have different sort of climates, even different gyms have different vibes and different types of people that are there, right? But it's like you could be that person that's there and someone else could see you and you might not even know. So I think that's kind of what keeps me going there.
This is not gym specific at all because I don't go. Maybe I should, but I think just generally, it's so easy to get caught up in an external gaze of what certain change, certain thing, how it will be perceived. And I just like think that, the sort of just leaning into the pleasure and fun of it, like projecting a future you, will it be fun to to be embodied in this way, to go through this thing? Like we're so often taught to deprioritize the pleasure, but I think this whole transition thing is supposed to be fun.
I second that as well. And I also tell my clients, sometimes if you catch someone staring at you, just think like, yeah, they're probably gay and they're checking you out.
And on that note, since we are running short on time, this will probably have to be our last question, but this comes from our Zoom community audience, whose question is, or poses, harm has also been done in queer trans spaces. What work do you do to practice that you're not causing harm in a room of other queer trans folks who have multiple, say, 3 or 4 targeted identities?
I think for me, I hold and understand that I will cause harm unconsciously, right? Because we are humans, and we are not perfect, and we're not meant to be perfect. So I know for me, and that's the belief that I hold, that like I unintentionally might cause harm. And my big thing is I want to make sure that I'm holding myself accountable, and making sure I can reduce that harm as much as possible. I've personally been in a lot of spaces where people have lied about their identities, specifically being folks of color, and stealing resources. And so for me, I try to have a practice where like I want to make sure that like I do the best I can, and knowing and understanding that if someone's telling me that I've experienced harm, I take that feedback as a gift, because it's not guaranteed, right? And it shouldn't be, right? So for me, that's something that I try to do as an individual, as well as as a someone that does a lot of facilitation. I set a lot of ground rules, and I stick to them. I literally will be like, if I'm doing like a workshop, I'm like, if anyone is disrupting this space and causing harm, I'm kicking you out. Period. Period. I do not have the time, because there are people here that truly want to engage in community and be able to have very honest conversations. And I do not have a lot of skills to be able to work with somebody who doesn't want that process, right? Doesn't want to be involved. So for me, that's what I will say. But a lot of it is a lot of internal work. That might also just mean that I'm a Pisces, because I do a lot of internal introspection a lot. But for me, that's like a philosophy that I try to hold, and try to make sure to bring folks along the way who like don't have those skills and want to build those skills too. So showing that care both ways.
Thank you, TK. That was a brilliant note to end on. Panelists, thank you for your participation and for giving us all the opportunity to learn from you and learn with you. These conversations are not easy, they're not comfortable, and they are not meant to be. So thank you to all of you for holding and sharing in this space with us. And a huge thank you again to the Office of DEI, Action Lab, Lavender Collective, Hart, Kim Gardner, and Lorenzo, Sarah, everyone who's contributed to making this event happen. And yeah, we'll see y'all at the next one.